Hello, party people, and welcome to another episode of the Mug Life Podcast. I'm Brittany, and today's episode is going to be for the mom that feels like she wants to start working out, or maybe you're working out and it's just not something that you feel like is sustainable, or maybe you were like, okay, I don't know how many days to work out. I'm ready to, I'm motivated to work out. I bought the dumbbells and the resistance bands, or I got the gym membership, but it's like, wait, what exercises do I do? And how much of it do I do? And what the heck is a superset? And do I do yoga? And do I do cardio? And how much cardio? And how much weight should I be lifting, right? These are all super important questions, and I'm really happy that you have them because I'm here to answer all of these questions and more today. I'm also going to be giving you some insight on how to build a program for yourself and how to build structure and routine and systems so that you're more likely to get your workouts in instead of making all these big plans to start working out and then burning out like 3 weeks in, okay? Because I want to first acknowledge that it can be super discouraging to start a workout program and not get the results that you want. But I want to challenge you to consider that maybe you're not getting the results that you want because what you're doing isn't sustainable and isn't right for you. And so today, you're listening to this episode, you saw the title of this episode and you were like, oh, this is for me, because you are somebody that is ready to make a change. You're a mom who has maybe bought the gym membership and you just haven't really used it and you have some guilt around that. You had every intention of starting to work out. Every time you try to work out, your toddler needs you, or your baby wakes up from his nap, or, something comes up at your child's school, something happens, right? Maybe you get sick, maybe your kids get sick. And it can be so damn discouraging to be so invested in yourself and like truly, really want to make a change in your health if it just feels like every time you try, you fail. And so if you're somebody that clicked on this episode in hopes of finding an answer or finding encouragement or finding a way that finally helps you lose weight and feel good in your skin and not wake up every morning like squishing your belly and looking in the mirror and being frustrated because your pants are too tight. Like if you are somebody that really has those types of goals, like you just want to feel pretty again, like you want to lose some weight, you want to not feel like you're like a marshmallow in your clothes. If that's you, then this episode is going to help you. It's not going to help you lose weight, right? You have to actually implement and take action and be consistent to lose weight. But this will set you up so that it feels a little bit less intimidating. And you also are in a position where you're like, okay, all right, Brittany, I can do this. That sounds doable. I've never even heard about it this way before. And like, thank you so much for just making it like simple and digestible. Because here's the truth. When you look on like things like Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, it's overwhelming. And it's overwhelming because it's like information overload. And if you're just wanting to get started, or maybe just want to better understand why you do certain exercises over others, maybe just understanding terminology like reps and sets and supersets and, understanding what a circuit is and strength training and toning and muscle building, like if that's something that you're trying to work through on top of figuring out what to do, when to do it, and find the motivation to do it, of course you're overwhelmed. Of course you're tripping yourself up. Of course you have days where you just get to the end of your day where your workout's supposed to be and you just say, F it. I don't want to do it. I can't do it. I don't have the energy, right? And so this episode is going to be so helpful for you. And I really encourage you to share this episode with somebody that might also find it valuable, because the more that you share my podcast, the more moms I can help. And then the more moms I help, the happier I am. So let's jump into today's episode, because I want to start off by something that okay, I'm going to hold your hand. This is me holding your hand. I'm reaching out. If you're listening on audio, I'm like reaching my hand out for you. I'm going to hold your hand when I say this, okay? If you are somebody that wants to get toned, right? We hear this a lot. Well, I want to like look good and I want to lose fat and I want to lose weight, but I just want to look more toned, right? You're like, I don't want to be bulky. I just want to like tone up, right? And there's nothing wrong with saying that, because that's kind of what we're taught, especially as women, that women like to get toned and men like to get bulky. But here's the thing. I'm going to take a drink of coffee before I tell you this. The idea of getting toned is a myth. And we're going to bust that today. Okay. So when you say, I want to be toned, what that actually means is you want to lose fat and you want to see definition or a little bit of shape to your body, right? You don't want to feel like a rectangle. You don't want to feel like a marshmallow. You want to see, some curves, maybe some like V lines, maybe some of like the delt muscle, maybe some like in your arms, like when you move, it's like lean, nothing's hanging, right? Like you want to feel firm and toned. Like those are the words that we think about when we think of like a quote unquote fit female body, right? And of course, I want to like make sure that you understand that there is no ideal form and everybody's body is different, right? And what you picture in your head that your body's going to look like may not ever come to existence because your body physically and biologically and genetically just wasn't made to look exactly like that. Okay. And so I say that not to discourage you, but I say that so you understand that we are given one body. And if we can really just lean into the idea of getting in the quote unquote best shape for us, then we're much better off than picturing like our favorite supermodel or a favorite fitness influencer and just being like, I want my body to look exactly like that. Because I'm so sorry to tell you this, it never will be, because she's not you and you are not her. However, you can look snatched, you can lose fat, and you can see muscle definition and look quote unquote toned in your body in a way that makes sense for your form. Okay. And I did this. I'm guilty of this. In the past, I would, picture somebody that I thought was super attractive. Usually it was like a movie star. In my day, it was like Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera. And I was like, I want that body. I want that shape. Like that is my goal. And all that ever did for me was compare myself over and over and over again and frustrate me. And even if I was making progress and maybe my clothes were fitting a little looser, maybe I was starting to notice muscle definition. Everybody loses weight, gains weight, creates muscle mass in different parts of the body, quicker, slower, and in different ways. And so if I was just looking at my progress and comparing that to Britney Spears in her, her fit body days where she was like, wearing her suit and like dancing with a snake, then I would never truly be happy with the progress I was making. And then I would burn out and I would quit before I had the opportunity to be in the best shape of my life. And so I repeated that cycle for a really long time until I realized okay, when I gain weight personally, my weight is in my arms. Like I've always had very large arms, not muscular. Like I've just always had large arms. My body stores fat in my arms first, 100%. And for some women, they store fat in their legs and their thighs. Or some women right now, those lucky ducks, they store their fat in their buttocks, right? And some people it's in their midsection. I'm definitely midsection and arms. And I just want you to know that it is what it is. And you can't change your genetics, but you can change the way that you think about your body and the way that you think about exercise and nutrition, right? But this podcast is mainly, and I'm going off on a tangent here, but this podcast is mainly about exercising and getting into the best shape of your life. And to do that, it has to be something that you can do for the rest of your life. And if this is something that you're trying to just lose the last 10 pounds and then be done, I'm sorry, sister, but that's not a way to live, because what's going to happen, those 10 pounds are going to come right back. You have to be in the longevity mindset. And I know it's really hard to do when you're when you're younger. Like I'm in my 30s and it's hard to think about, what you're going to be like when you're 65. And I know that right now, here and now matters. And so if you're a mom, think about how you want to be when your kids, are having grandbabies, right? Like when you're a grandma. Do you want to be in a position where you keep trying to lose that last 10 pounds and you never put on any muscle and you're a frail, skin and bones, easily break your hip woman? No, we want to be able to be like that really badass 7-year-old lady who's running and going down this slide with her grandkids. Why? Because she chose a sustainable path to strength workouts and eating to fuel her body, nourish her body, never to restrict, and to focus on building core strength, functional strength, and strength where we are putting muscle on our frame as opposed to just trying to lose all of our fat. Okay. So but I keep going off on a tangent here, but I hope this is kind of resonating with some of you guys and that you're understanding that there's so much more to exercising and strength training and quote unquote, this idea of toning, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about. That is just surface level stuff. we have to really consider we have to consider ourselves as individuals, and what works for one person may not work for another. So the advice and the tips and the tricks that I'm giving you today, I want you to take, but recognize that it might look different for you, and that's okay. In fact, if you can figure out what this looks like for you, then you're going to be in a position where it is sustainable and you can do this for the rest of your life. And I want to mention, are you the same person that you were in high school? What about in elementary school? Were you the same person that you were in college? How about as that first-time mom? How about after kid number 2? How about when you got married? Like, think about it. You have changed so much over the course of your life. So why in the heck do you think that doing the same amount of days of strength training, the same amount of cardio, the same amount of weight for the rest of your life is going to work? Because it's not. You have to find what works for you in the phase of life you're in. And here's the deal. Yes, and I'm going to talk about this, with strength training, we got to repeat a lot of stuff. We got to do the same thing over and over and over again and get stronger with those intentional movements that we choose. However, it might be that in one phase of your life, you're working out 3 days a week, and in another phase, you're working out 4 to 6 days a week. And then it might be only 2 days a week, right? But we have to find what we can stick to and do consistently. And I've found in my own experience and that of my clients that typically this comes and goes in waves. Like a couple of years we're doing one thing, and then the next couple of years we're doing another. If it's switching up every month, that's probably a red flag that what you're doing is not sustainable. Okay? All right. So let's start here. Okay? I know you want to be toned, but I want you to understand something really important about muscle growth. Okay? So muscles can either grow or shrink. That's it. You might have heard the words hypertrophy, which means to grow, or atrophy, which means to shrink, right? When we age, our muscles are going to shrink a little bit if we do not create stimulation of the muscles and grow the muscles continuously throughout our lives. And we can do that by strength training. I want to explain to you the idea of toning and what you are thinking and then what really is happening here, okay? So our bodies, if you picture them kind of like a sculpture, all right? The muscle is like the wire part of the sculpture, right? It's going to give the form, the definition, it's solid. It's kind of giving the form to the actual body or the sculpture, okay? And then fat layers on top of those wires, okay? And that creates an additional form. So when you are somebody that's wanting to quote unquote tone up, what you really are wanting without maybe not knowing it is you're wanting to build wire sculpture. So you're wanting to build muscle, right? And then lose fat, because what happens when you look bulky, that's because you have gained muscle, you've grown your muscle, but that layer of fat is still on top of that muscle, which then creates that kind of like bulkier look. Also, you might have heard this called skinny fat. So somebody that hasn't gained any muscle, they've just lost a bunch of weight, but their body almost looks saggy, like the skin is really like loose and doesn't have a lot of form. Well, that's because they haven't taken the time to intentionally build muscle first, so that when they shed that fat, when the fat is lost, the muscle can be revealed, right? And remember, think about that muscle like a wire sculpture. It's creating form on the body. And if you're wanting that lean, toned look, the ultimate goal then is to put on muscle, okay? Grow your muscles, and then lose fat to reveal that muscle. And this idea that like we don't want to lift too heavy because we become bulky is just a bullshit. Like it's a fallacy. It's not real. It's this idea that like for some reason, somewhere along the line, we want to scare women into like being smaller. Okay. I'm gonna tell you right now, I lift some heavy ass weight and I'm not bulky. I'm not. When I put on a dress and I go out in my sundress in the summer, I feel really pretty and I feel like I look feminine. I don't feel like I look quote unquote manly, and I am lifting heavy. I'm lifting some heavy ass weights. Okay. And I am still in the process of going through cycles, right? So when we're working out, we want to build muscle, get stronger, and then we want to shed fat. And this is why we go through phases of deficits with nutrition, right? So we want to go through like a quote unquote bulking phase. I'm sorry that it's called bulking phase because I don't want to scare you away from it, but where we're just eating a little bit more, we're eating slightly more calories, some more protein, and we're allowing our body to be in a position where we can really put on muscle, right? We're feeding our body enough where it can grow. Okay. Because if you're under eating, your body's going to be worried about your breathing and your heartbeat and your brain functioning and you getting enough sleep and just moving in like daily day-to-day things. If you are under eating, your body, the last thing it's going to be worrying about is building muscle. And so if we want to build muscle, we have to make sure we're eating enough food. And I don't want to talk about nutrition during this podcast because I really want to focus on exercise and strength training. So that'll be for a different time, but it's important to know that. Okay. And then if we pull back in calories and pull into a calorie deficit after we've gone through a phase of building muscle, we then allow our body to shed the fat and reveal the muscle underneath, which creates that quote unquote toned look. All right. And if you're somebody that is wanting that toned look, taking those little pink baby weights and doing like really quick, lots of reps, lightweight, like it's not going to work. I'm sorry. It's not. It's just not. You're not going to be building muscle. You're not challenging the muscle. The ultimate goal when we're strength training for hypertrophy to happen is we're basically, it sounds really kind of gross actually, but when you are lifting heavy weights, okay, we are creating microscopic tears in the muscle fibers. And what happens during recovery, which is actually just as important, if not more important than the actual workout. But the recovery phase, which is important, why we need to be hydrated, eating enough food, have electrolytes, all those things, and sleep. The important part of recovery is our body is building and rebuilding the muscle. And what it almost does is creates like an added layer. That's what grows the muscle, right? It's not technically this, but this is a good way to think about it, is like an analogy. Like if you have a scar tissue, it kind of builds on top. It might be a little bit raised. Same thing with the muscle. We're tearing down microscopic tears in the muscles and rebuilding on top. And when that heals, the muscle is quote unquote more toned. Okay. It's getting bigger, firmer, etc. And once again, I'm not using like scientific terms. I'm not trying to be extremely like, this is a study I read, but I want you to understand it in a way that makes sense. And for me, this was like a good way to picture it, is to just picture like the fibers tearing and then rebuilding and then almost scarring and creating extra growth. I like to paint a picture with analogies so that it makes sense for you. So then it's also important to recognize that there are no specific exercises that are going to make you bulky or make you more toned. All exercises are created equal, and what matters is how we pair certain exercises that challenge certain muscle groups during a specific workout. Because if you just go to the gym or grab your dumbbells at home and just do a bunch of bicep curls and a couple squats and run in place, like it's going to be helpful. Like any exercise is good. Don't get me wrong. Like I encourage you to do that. But if you have very specific goals to get toned or to build muscles, what you really want to do, by the way, if you're wanting to build muscle so that you can have that form, that look, and lose fat, then we have to be strategic about what we're doing. And that way, especially as moms, we're not wasting our time, right? We want to be as strategic as possible so that when we get in, we're getting the most bang for our buck. And so now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why we build strength programs the way we do, why I do that for my clients, my app subscribers, and how to do it so it doesn't feel like overwhelmed. Because let me ask you this. Have you ever gotten on Google and been like, Googled like upper body workout or booty blasting workout, and then like hundreds and millions of videos pop up and it's like 25-minute dance cardio, 10-minute strength training, upper body, glutes and hamstrings, and it's like, how do I know what to do? Right? Like it's so overwhelming. And the first thing I want to say is doing something that you hate doing will never be sustainable. So you have to kind of find this middle ground, but also you have to understand that strength training, if you are wanting that toned look, you're gonna want to strength train. Okay. Like that's just a must. And so finding ways to strength train that you enjoy is essential. Okay. It's also important to consider like, how many days do I truly believe that I can commit to work out? Okay. Because a lot of the time what we do is we're like, okay, I'm ready to do this 5 days a week. I'm going to do 5 days a week for an hour. And then you do like 3 weeks and you're burnt out. And so as moms, especially, our time is super limited. And so what I can recommend to you is picking a number that feels on the lower end. Okay. And then you can always build from there. But if we pick something that's actually attainable, and we can stick to it and we can be committed to it and we can see that we keep showing up and we build confidence in our ability to follow through. And then we're more likely to add in other things, add in more days, etc. So if you were a beginner, I would suggest starting with 2 to 3 days max right now of working out. Okay. And typically if you're only working out 3 days or 2 days, I recommend doing a full body workout. Because if we were to break up our muscles into sections, so like if you've ever heard of a push or a pull day, right? So the reason we pair certain muscles together is because they are working synergistically. So they are working like, so for example, the chest and the triceps are push day muscle groups, right? When you are working on something like a bench press where you're pushing the weight away from your chest, your triceps are also assisting in that motion. Although the chest is the primary muscle group being worked, your triceps are also supporting you. And so you're getting more bang for your buck with less exercises because you're working multiple muscles over and over again with each exercise in that group, okay? And so if you only have 3 days, it's really hard to fit a push day, a pull day, a lower body day, which, by the way, lower body, you have glutes, quads, hamstrings, right? It's really hard to fit all that in 3 days, okay? And then not to mention, if you're wanting to incorporate some core work or some cardio, it can be a lot. So what I recommend to beginners is typically we like to do a 3-day split, okay? And for full body, you're hitting your back and biceps, which is technically considered like a pull day because those are pulling motions that are moving. You're pulling the weight, right? You're pulling the weight back. You're pulling the weight up to create like a bicep curl, your back, right? Those motions work the back muscles, right? Which also work the biceps. So we want to do something that hits kind of all of the muscle groups 3 times a week, okay? So like your first day, you could focus on a pull movement, a push movement, and a lower body movement. And the lower body movement, like I said, there was kind of like 3 things we're thinking about, like our quads, our hamstrings, and our glutes. Typically, our glutes are going to work with both the quad movement and the hamstring movement. So that's great because we want to hit our glutes a lot anyways, because it's just a strong, really developed muscle. But so we would have each day, day 1, day 2, and day 3, would hit all of those things in a different way, right? Because doing a row and doing a bicep curl hit your bicep differently, okay? And they also, the way that we're pulling, the direction of our pull matters as well. And I don't want to get too complicated here, but I want to encourage you to just consider like, okay, do I have some type of pull movement, some type of pushing movement, and some type of lower body movement? And if I want to sprinkle in some core work at the end, great, okay? So 3 days of that. And then I usually recommend 1 to 2 days of some type of cardio, 30 minutes or more. Okay. Maybe that's swimming. Maybe that's jogging. Maybe that's taking a brisk walk, but I want your heart rate to get up. Okay. Maybe that's doing the Stairmaster or the elliptical, whatever you like to do and feel like you can sustainably do that every week, then great. Okay. So that's where I would start. Okay. And I do have app workouts made for moms. If you're interested, just contact me and I can send you that. It's like a monthly membership where I create workouts for you if that's something you're interested in. But it's important to recognize that if we don't start small and build, we're never going to get stronger. And that's the other thing I want to talk to you about is you probably heard the words progressive overload before. All that means is just getting stronger over time. Okay. And we can't get stronger over time if every day when we go lift, we grab those 10-pound dumbbells and we just do a bunch of bicep curls, right? Those 10-pound dumbbells are comfortable. Okay. That's great. They're comfortable. And I get wanting to be comfortable, but if we don't get uncomfortable, we're not going to be tearing those muscle fibers. We're not going to be building muscle. And then we aren't going to start shedding fat and revealing muscle because there won't be any muscle there. So the number 1 tip I can give to you is to start tracking what you're lifting. Write it down in your apps on your phone, write it down on a piece of paper, join my app subscription, whatever it is, so you can track and see what am I lifting each week. And we want to kind of bump it up each week. Maybe you're doing more reps at the same weight. Maybe you are doing a little bit heavier weight, or maybe you're slowing down the tempo. Okay. Those are all ways to make the exercise a little bit harder. Okay. And if we are actually challenging the body, it's going to grow, right? It's going to adapt. However, if you are somebody that's like, oh, I get bored easily and I don't want to do the same exercises every day, I'm sorry. Get over it. Sorry. If you're somebody that wants something fun, mix up your cardio, okay? If you want to build muscle and shed fat, you have got to do the same workouts consistently for at least 4 weeks. I usually recommend 4 to 8 weeks. And tracking what your reps are, what your weight is, and gradually going up as you go and getting stronger. Because ultimately, if you aren't getting stronger and your body's not having to adapt and to grow that muscle, you're not going to build that tone look that you're after, period. Okay, so drop the little baby 10-pound weights and pick up some 20s and see what you're made of. A good rep range is around like 8 to 10 reps. And then we don't want to get much lower than like 6 reps if we're trying to do just like a basic movements. There, you'll hear a lot of people say like, oh, you're 1 rep max. And let's just keep it really simple. And we want to be in the like 6 to 8 rep range is a good rep range if you're lifting pretty heavy. If you're lifting a little bit lighter, like a 10 to 12 rep range. Okay. Typically we do 3 to 4 sets. That just depends on what your goals are and what your plan is. And when you're working through building a program, we want to make sure that we are doing the stuff that's our main focus first. So if you're like, okay, this is my glutes and hamstrings day, and I really want to build my glutes, you're going to do your hip thrusts first because you want all of your energy and all of your power into those hip thrusts. And then you do the next exercise and the next exercise, right? So we want to do some of these like foundational exercises first so that we don't deplete ourselves and then put at the end of the workout and have like nothing to give to grow. Okay. So that's another thing. Another quick tip for you is to always do the weaker side first. So if you're doing one movement where it's like alternating, like bicep curls, for example, or alternating lunges, always start your reps, match your reps to the weakest side, because what that does is it'll help create balance with your muscle building. Okay. And then another thing that I want to mention to you, the work doesn't just stop in the gym. It's also important to get in steps. I know it's kind of annoying to hear this like 10K step goal. I don't want you to have a step goal. I just want you to make a decision to take some kind of walk each day. Doesn't matter how long it is. You can set your own goals for that, but try and get in at least 1 walk a day. Walking after meals is a great option because it'll give you a boost of energy and help you digest food. Walking after your workout is also great. It's a good cool down, but don't neglect simply walking. Another thing is stretching. Especially as you get older, you are going to want to start stretching. You're going to want to warm up with something dynamic. Dynamic warm-ups mean you're moving the body in a more fluid motion, and we're not just like holding a stretch, right? We don't want to do that at the beginning of a workout. We want to do something that's like more of a flow. Okay. And then at the end of your workout, that's when we're doing static stretching, which means we're holding the stretch for at least 30 seconds or longer. And we're really allowing our body to kind of release some of that tension in the muscle. Okay. And having like a planned yoga day is a great way to remember to stretch and to lengthen the muscle and just give your body an opportunity to just kind of de-stress. Okay. That's essential. People kind of just skip the stretching because they're like, oh, I'm in a rush, but skipping the stretching is what's going to lead to injury. So I highly recommend making sure you make time for stretching. Okay. And then lastly, I want to remind you that it's not going to be perfect and it's going to feel hard at first, but if we can just commit to small first and then grow, you're going to be in a much better position where you won't burn out and feel like it's not possible for you. It is possible for you. And I hope that this podcast was helpful today. I know I gave you a lot of information, but I'm always here to help. Send me a message. I'd be glad to give you some feedback, help you create a plan. And thanks so much for listening. It means the world to me. And if you could rate my podcast and send it to a friend, that would be even better. So I hope that you crush your workout this week, and I will see you in the next one.